From the first while on the day we met, I was drawn to you immediately by beauty. As time went on, I started to see you not only as a beautiful person on the outside, but on the inside as well. You're honest, trusting, unselfish, gentle, loyal, tender, and the joy of my life. As I stared into your eyes, I found myself lost in you. I would like to thank you for accepting me for who I am and believing in me. You're the world to me. I promise to stand by your side as we face new and challenging experiences.
Kate Gosselin was born Katie Irene Kreider on March 28, 1975 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to parents Charlene and Ken Kreider. Her parents met each other at the Lower Dauphin High School and began dating in the late 60s. After graduating high school in 1967, Ken enlisted in the United States Navy and was then stationed in Jacksonville, Florida for his first assignment. Charlene would follow her high school sweetheart to Florida, where they married on March 16, 1968. Upon completing his 4-year commitment to the United States Navy, Ken earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Biblical Studies from Lancaster Bible College and his Master of Education degree from Millersville. Together, Ken and Charlene welcomed 5 children: Kendra, Kristen, Kate, Kevin, and Clarissa.
Tell me what your childhood was like, Kate.
I was one of 5 kids. I was the middle child, the forgotten middle child, as they say. I have 3 sisters and 1 brother. It was a strict upbringing, I would say. I went to a Christian school, kindergarten through 12th grade.
So was it a loving home?
Yes, my parents did their best. My mom was the ever-present parent who saw to it that our meals were cooked and our house was taken care of.
Faith and religion were a big part of Kate's childhood and upbringing, as her father Ken taught Bible studies at various Christian schools throughout his professional career. Though rich in faith, the family was quite poor, as they lived on a tight budget in a trailer park.
My parents struggled, I would say. I'm famous for telling my mom growing up my whole life, Mom, 5 kids is way too many. There's just, you lose something in the details. There was a lot in my childhood that was not happy. It would probably take me 10 years to figure it out.
Growing up, Kate was a very structured, organized girl who had her whole life mapped out. In their book, Multiple Blessings, she wrote, "Like most little girls, I had dreamed of the day I would meet my husband, have children, and settle down to live a happily ever after kind of life. I had been a planner my whole life and took great pride when my plans unfolded exactly as my detailed, scheduled list and calendar said they should." In addition to being a planner, Kate was an excellent student who took her studies seriously. She was diligent, structured, and focused. Never in a million years did Kate anticipate the twists and turns her life would take. But before we go any further, let's pause and thank today's sponsor. Today's episode has been brought to you by NordVPN. As a narrator and storyteller, a lot of research goes into my content. Browsing various sites and collecting information can be scary, but not with NordVPN. They are one of the world's largest VPN providers that offer top-notch security features for your online safety. NordVPN puts me at ease when I'm researching and scouring the internet. Their services keep me protected and make me feel safe while being online. With their threat protection feature, you can avoid online hazards like viruses, infected websites, and trackers. You can mask your IP address, protect your data, and be notified if any of your personal information has been leaked to various sites. NordVPN doesn't track, collect, or share any of your private data. So when I'm researching for a deep dive, I can be at ease knowing that my personal information isn't being collected, shared, or sold to a third party. Whether you're a student and spend a lot of time online, like to binge watch your favorite show, or like to consume a lot of YouTube content, it's important to be safe. Don't compromise your online safety. Protect yourself today. Get 4 months for free on a 2-year plan by using my code at nordvpn.com/thecommentator. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Thanks, Nord, for sponsoring today's episode. After graduating from Mount Calvary Christian School in 1993, Kate enrolled in a diploma program to become a nurse. Everything was going according to her plan, but on a nice, warm fall day in 1997, she would meet a mysterious young man.
It was a sunny, warm day in October 1997, I had to think. And what happened, honey?
I was working at a hotel. I was living with my mother at the time.
I had just graduated from nursing school.
They had all these company picnics and training things, and they had one this one weekend.
What day of the weekend was it?
I have no idea. I would say a Saturday.
It was a Sunday. I went with a friend of mine who worked there. She worked there and for whatever reason asked me to go with her. And I was young and energetic and I said, sure, I'll go. Who cares? And there was this guy walking across the grass and I wasn't really looking for anybody because I was very self-sufficient.
Kate was quite taken aback by this mysterious young man whose name was Jon. Jon was born April 1st, 1977, to parents Thomas and Pamela Gosselin in Wyomissing, Pennsylvania. Together, Thomas and Pamela had 3 boys, Thomas Jr., John, and Mark. Their father was a pediatric dentist who had his own practice, and their mother was a nurse. Upon graduating from Wyomissing High School in 1995, Jon was adrift and didn't really know what his future held. Unlike Kate, he wasn't ambitious and just floated around.
Jon, before you met Kate, can you sort of give us an idea of what you were doing with yourself?
Nothing. I was doing nothing with myself. No career. I worked at a ski slope.
Just got back from Europe.
Just got back from backpacking across Europe. I didn't have any goals. Didn't want to get married. Didn't want to have kids.
Unlike Jon, Kate had clear intentions for her future, which included when and how she would meet her future husband. And those plans didn't include meeting him at a company picnic in the park. But in 1997, on that fall day, Jon caught her eye, and she couldn't deny that. She wrote, I tried not to let my eye get caught on him for too long. I was here to be with a friend, not to find a date. But this guy was not aware of my plan, and didn't seem to mind having his eye caught on me. We had that unexplainable good chemistry that seemed to electrify the air around us, and I couldn't help but let my guard down. It seems so silly now, but those first moments of discovery were so fun, so carefree.
It's December 25th, 1998. Okay?
Are you recording?
And we're gonna have to open our presents now.
Are you recording?
Yes, Kate, look at the red light.
Merry Christmas. We were the couple that people always said, like, we were sickening sweet.
Jon and Kate's relationship progressed quickly, and after only 6 months of dating, Jon popped the question. Kate wrote, Jon, who can never keep a secret for very long, whipped a spanky new diamond ring from his pocket and asked me to be his wife. After briefly relishing in the joy of being engaged, Kate got down to business and wasted no time planning their wedding. Unlike Jon, who was more laid back, Kate self-admittedly has type A personality. She wrote, See, I may have stepped out of character to fall in love with a stranger in the park, but I was still that little girl with an action plan. I needed a list. In fact, mini list. It complemented my obsessive need to be organized. Type A. Take charge and put a label on it and get the job done. That's me. It wasn't long before I had a to-do list for everyone involved with our wedding. Caterers, florists, bridesmaids, and yes, even Jon. I was determined to plan every detail of our beautiful outdoor wedding. And plan it she did. Kate's need for everything to be in order was something Jon was initially attracted to in the beginning.
When I decided to ask Kate to marry me, I looked for someone, she's very scheduled, very organized, career-driven. I mean, everything that you see is escalated at that point. But in the beginning, I never dated a girl with a path. I just kind of like hung out, partied, whatever. And that really attracted me. She's a beautiful girl, which when you're 20, that's kind of all you think about. And, I don't know. It just felt, it was different. It was just different than the other girls I dated.
After a year and a half of planning their wedding, Jon and Kate married on June 12, 1999, in Jon's hometown of Wyomissing, Pennsylvania, in front of 100 guests. They said, Our special day could not have been more perfect. 75 degrees under crystal clear blue skies.
I promise to walk by your side, to support you, love you, help you, and encourage you. I'll always be there for you, comfort you, love you, honor you, cherish you, now and forevermore.
It's the happiest day of my life as I take you as my wife and commit myself to you for the rest of our lives.
After the couple set their vows and promised to dedicate their lives to one another for as long as they both shall live, they got on a plane and took off on their honeymoon.
We went to Disney World on our honeymoon. Well,
If
that was your first time
do that
there,
over
right?
again, I would go to an
It was
island.
Kate's first time there.
Yeah. This is the first time I flew.
First time on an airplane.
I'm still alive. I was scared. I like the clouds. Dizzy.
Hello. There's my wife again.
When Jon and Kate returned from their honeymoon, they quickly settled into married life and were over the moon. Kate wrote, "Married life was all I had imagined and more. We were young, healthy, and ambitious, and it wasn't long before baby fever set in." Kate had always longed to be a mom. It was something she daydreamed about ever since she was a little girl.
I always was holding somebody's baby. I might not even remember who the baby was. I was always babysitting. I was always gone. I mean, I babysat more kids than I could probably count anymore.
After enjoying married life for a few months, Jon and Kate began trying to fulfill those dreams of expanding their family. But after months of trying with no success, Kate became worried that her premonition of not being able to conceive was true. She wrote, "The perennial dark question, what if I can't?" That nagging thought would intensify as I soon discovered I had a condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome. Basically, that meant I did not ovulate. Not a little bit. Not ever.
My greatest dream was to be a mom, and I actually used to say to my mom when I was very young, "Mommy, what if when I get older I can't have babies?"
Her childhood fears later became a reality.
I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and that is like a very common fertility issue.
Though devastated, Jon and Kate would turn to something that had been a big part of their lives individually and as a couple: prayer. Through tears, they began incessantly praying that one day God would bless them with children. She wrote, "Jon and I were devastated. We were worried and prayed and then cried and prayed some more. It seemed like the family we longed for was not going to happen, at least not in the traditional way. I felt empty, betrayed, and broken, like someone had played a cruel joke and stolen all my dreams when I wasn't looking. I am not one to wallow in self-pity. I am a doer. Give me an obstacle and I'm going to do everything I can to get over it." With the new determination and our eyes on the goal, Jon and I made the difficult decision to seek the expertise of an infertility specialist. This decision was painful and beyond difficult for Kate to make. She considered herself a hardcore Christian whose life had been written and designed by God. Entrusting the hands of someone else to make your dreams come true to her was a hard concept to grasp. She wrote, "As a Christian, I believe Psalm 139:16, which says that all of our days are fashioned for us before we've even lived one of them. In other words, I knew in my heart that God had already ordained exactly if, when, where, and how my baby would eventually come to be, long before I ever stepped foot in that doctor's office." In January of 2000, Jon and Kate would embark on a very strenuous, painful IVF journey in hopes of getting pregnant. After her first round of injections, Jon and Kate waited to hear if they were successful.
We kind of had a feeling that there might be underlying problems.
And I just always had that gut feeling, so I went to the doctor and basically I was right. And so pretty much we went, because they said I had PCOS, which obviously I needed help. And so we went to a fertility doctor. And they kept telling us, "You have your age on your side, you're young, you're young."
After this first attempt, Kate would menstruate shortly after, and the couple would have to deal with the devastating news that they weren't pregnant. Though devastated, they wouldn't give up, but tried again. She wrote, "Just a few days before the end of my next cycle, I decided to go ahead and take a home pregnancy test. Somewhere down deep, I was hoping that after seeing the neutral white indicator so many times, the odds would work in my favor and that, one day, by some miracle, that darn little window would be pink." When you are trying to become pregnant, and especially if you have suffered through the wrenching trials of infertility, Somehow, something as simple as that tiny rectangle on the end of a piece of plastic stick takes on all the promises of tomorrow's hopes and dreams. On this particular morning, I had woken up around 4:30 a.m. to use the bathroom. I did my test, and then, still groggy with sleep, laid it on the bathroom counter and plopped back into my warm bed. It was extremely unusual that I did not camp out in that small, cold bathroom, hovering and pacing, waiting as the minutes ticked by until, as so many times before, I would read the dreaded results. Instead, it was a full hour later when I got up to get ready for work as a nurse that I remembered to check the test. I couldn't believe my eyes. Could it really be pink?
Positive pregnancy test. Proof of our hard work, determination, and lots of tears shed over this. Here's 2 more that I took that are darker, just to see them turn positive, of course. This is by far probably the most wanted pregnancy ever in the whole world.
Jon and Kate were beyond thrilled and elated to finally know their IVF journey was a success. Kate would later go get a blood test, which also confirmed that she was indeed pregnant. On March 17, 2000, Jon and Kate would go to their scheduled ultrasound appointment and receive even more exciting news. They were not only expecting 1 child, but 2. She wrote, "To our amazement, our wildest dreams came true. We heard those musical words. There's more than 1. We were expecting twins." Kate's pregnancy with the twins wasn't without complications. After suffering severe morning sickness, dehydration, and early contractions, Kate was put on bed rest. After months of being bedridden, Jon and Kate would welcome their twin girls on October 8, 2000. She wrote, "Finally, on October 8, 2000, all of the dreaded shots, uncomfortable tests, suspenseful ultrasounds, required hospital stays, and endless hours of bed rest would be graciously and faithfully rewarded in the arrival of 2 bright-eyed, dark-haired beauties. Our daughter Cara Nicole Gosselin arrived weighing in at 3 pounds 3 ounces, followed minutes later by her younger sister Mady and Kate, who weighed 5 pounds.
So the girls were born just months after our first year anniversary, which now thinking about it, what the heck was our rush? But anyway, I was just afraid that it would never happen, and so I just wanted to make sure, it was possible.
Pause 1 second, Daddy. It's not worth it now, but someday we'll say, oh, I don't even remember when the girls were that little. Hi. Hi. Oh, I got smiles from both of them.
After spending 4 days at the hospital, they would all go home and begin their new life as a family of 4. Kate wrote, "I went back to work as a nurse at the Pennsylvania dialysis clinic during the day, and Jon worked the night shift at a local company. It strikes me now as very impressive how my husband, at 23 years old, was capable of feeding, bathing, swaddling, diapering, dressing, and entertaining 2 infants all day long, and then going to work all night. I also marvel at the grace of God, who, in his own patient way, was prepping us even then for something that would later test our strength, endurance, tenacity, and sanity, as well as our commitment to each other and to God. The first year with the twins was a whirlwind of discoveries that Jon and Kate relished in. Eventually, on September 8, 2001, they purchased a new house, a tidy 3-bedroom home with a 1-car garage and a sprawling backyard. This was such a milestone for the young couple.
I look back on those years with the girls as some of our fondest memories.
Hi, Maddie. Your name's Maddie. Cara. Hi, girls. I can't see you. Oops, now I can't see Maddie. Her hat's over her head. Her hat's over her face, Daddy.
Yeah, she had one and I had one.
Yep. It was really manageable. We had no help. We didn't need help. We didn't want help.
In Kate's eyes, she was living the American dream. She wrote, "I had everything I had ever hoped for and prayed for. A loving and devoted husband, 2 chubby-cheeked, silky-haired daughters, a cozy home, and a rewarding career. It was the American dream. But I was having dreams of another sort."
It was when they when they were 9 months old, we bought our house, our first house that you've seen, and we moved in, and when they turned 1, I was actually sad because I just felt like my babies were growing up, and I wanted another baby, but Jon wouldn't hear anything about it. And
that's all I heard about.
Up until this point, Jon and Kate had been on the same page, but having more kids was not part of Jon's plans.
So you had the twins, and she begged you to have one more?
Begged.
Because 2 wasn't enough?
I wanted 3.
You wanted 3?
I really wanted to know what one baby was like.
Uh-huh.
I still don't know.
You still don't know. You wanted to know what it was like to hold one baby instead of 2.
To not have my time divided.
But after 2 years of begging and pleading and a failed attempt at adopting, Jon finally gave in to Kate's desires and agreed to go through the IVF process again. Jon would give Kate a total commitment time of 6 months. Not long after making this decision, they would receive exciting news. Their doctor discovered not 1, not 2, but 3 follicles, and possibly a 4th, with the potential to still mature. Jon and Kate were shocked. Even though their doctor discovered these follicles, they still needed to fertilize, and there was no guarantee that they would. Kate wrote, "Up until that point, when we spoke of multiples, we basically had been referring to the possibility of twins. Never did we ever really allow our minds to fully wrap around the idea of multiples turning into more than twins. Our doctor was quick to reassure us that it would be very unlikely that all 4 or even 3 of the follicles would be fertilized." And with this information, Jon and Kate proceeded with the process. A few weeks after Kate received her final injection, followed by the intrauterine insemination step, they found out they were expecting. Kate wrote, "On Friday, November 8th, 2003, I stood at work in a bustling operating room during a routine C-section. I had arrived at the hospital a few hours earlier once again, brandishing a white test stick that undeniably displayed the faintest blush of early pregnancy.
After 2 grueling cycles of artificial insemination, the Gosselins got the much-awaited news.
I could never wait for them to tell me, so I always took home pregnancy tests. I had taken so many that were negative. I wanted to see positive. And it was way before I should have known that I was pregnant. I took a test and it was positive, but I have to say I already knew.
Kate's day would take a quick shift from elation to pain as she began to feel increasingly ill as the day progressed. She felt weak, bloated, uncomfortable, and was in a lot of pain. After days of refusing to go to the hospital, Kate finally gave in. The pain was excruciating and too much to bear. As Kate drifted in and out of consciousness at the hospital, the OB/GYN resident performed an ultrasound and informed them that her stomach was completely filled with fluid due to overstimulated ovaries. Kate would undergo a procedure to release 2.5 liters of fluid from her abdomen. It would take her a few days to recover, but once she did, she would follow up with her infertility specialist. Her doctor would perform another ultrasound to check and see how many babies Kate was carrying. She wrote, "I was in a state of denial. I simply could not allow my brain to process what my eyes were telling it."
How were you told that there were going to be sextuplets?
We went for the ultrasound at 5.5 weeks.
Yes.
I had already been in the hospital for rare complications, which they didn't want to tell me, but it kind of pointed towards multiples. And so when we went in, I knew there was at least twins, and I told him that. And as soon as they flashed the ultrasound screen, I saw too many circles to count. And
look at that.
Yeah. And I was thinking, this cannot be babies. There's too many. I instantly went into shock. And then they started counting and lettering and whispering. And they got quieter and quieter.
And did other people then come in the room and then there's more whispers?
No, it was just the 2 of them, but they stopped talking to us, and that's always a bad sign.
Yes. Yes, don't we know?
Yes.
Yeah?
And then I looked at Jon. He was close to tears, which he's usually very silent and strong.
Yes.
And I thought, now we're really in trouble. And then he leaned down.
Yeah, I crouched on the floor.
Because he thought he was going to fall down.
Kate continued, "I really don't think anybody wanted to look anymore, but the count continued. 6, 7, letter G. They were named A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Upon delivering the shocking news, their doctor offered them selective reduction, which is a procedure that would terminate some of the unborn babies. Kate wrote, "I shot up and yelled, 'We will never do that,' whether there were 2, 4, or even 7 of them. He and I went head to head as he offered facts and information, statistics, and grim details of how my life would be at risk. He said that I would never be able to withstand the physical toll that the pregnancy would take. He said that I could die. But no matter the risk, Kate stood her ground. She would not reduce the number of babies in her belly. Jon, however, wasn't completely convinced that going through with this pregnancy was in their best interest. In fact, he had several reservations. Kate wrote, staring into Jon's eyes with determination, I asked him if he would really be able to stand before the Lord one day and admit that we had allowed our precious babies to be terminated in order to make our lives easier and more convenient. The nurse begged me to stop using the word terminated. I didn't. I couldn't. To me, that's exactly what it was. Tell me how I as a mother would go about selecting which beating heart to snuff out as if it were just a candle.
At the time, our whole lives just flashed before our eyes.
Very upsetting because you're thinking...
I'm 26 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of my twin daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And how am I going to afford this? And
Yes.
how are we going
Our house
to do
is
anything?
small and
Yes.
everything goes, all of that goes through your mind at once.
Yeah. So once you picked yourself up off the floor and got over the shock of it, because that's a huge responsibility.
Yeah, as a father, I think you want to take care of your family and do the best
Well, you
can.
should
And
want to, yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
And will always be. But I was thinking, like, financially, how do you afford this? How do you do anything?
How do you do anything?
Correct.
How do you live?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, seriously, how do you?
After making the decision to proceed with the pregnancy, they would embark on an uphill battle. One of those struggles would come sooner than they thought. The day after Thanksgiving in 2003, Jon and Kate would be informed that they had lost one.
You mentioned the seventh child. There was 7 in there, and now 6. But you don't elaborate much. It's just to mention, what was her name?
Well, we still talk about what we would have named her, and the reason I put it in Alexis's letter is because she reminds me often, she, of all my kids, reminds me of our 7th baby. I mean, I only mentioned it once in passing, once or twice here or there. You have to understand, I had my hands full with sextuplets. It's not like I was sitting around, thinking, oh my gosh, like so much about a 7th baby. But one day when they were like 1 or 2, it occurred to me that I was so busy in that moment that was a loss that we suffered, but I didn't spend time maybe grieving or dealing with the fact that there was a 7th baby. Mm-hmm. And to a lot of people that would sound ridiculous because they would say, oh my gosh, you had 6, like 5 more than you were planning on. What are you wasting your time thinking about? But that was a life that was created and who we don't have. So it makes you wonder, like, who would this baby have been? So we all kind of one day talked about it a long time ago and decided that it probably would have been a girl for whatever reason. It was unanimous. And we tossed around names for her here or there. And Alexis still asks about her.
The couple would then be hit with even more hardships. They faced psychological, physical, and financial dilemmas. Kate could no longer work and quit her job as a nurse, which put a financial burden on their household. Kate's body was also shutting down. She had taken so many trips to the emergency room for various reasons, such as bleeding, kidney stones, dehydration, and excruciating pain, to name a few. Eventually, she was put on bed rest. She wrote, at 18 weeks, I could barely bend over, and the strain of caring for the girls and me was taking its toll on Jon. The Gosselins were in a very challenging season, and to make matters worse, Jon would be accused of stealing time from the company he worked for and was fired. Kate wrote, in just 2 months' time, we went from a very comfortable 2-salary family to a couple who was quickly running out of strength, energy, and now savings.
We hit a very, very low in every way. Financially, almost a year out of work. We went from a 2-income house, doing it, bought a house, 2 kids, we were good, to all of a sudden no income.
Jon and Kate would face another obstacle. Unable to stay on bed rest at home, Kate was instructed to go on bed rest at the hospital, where she would remain under close observation until the birth of the babies. On March 7, 2004, Kate would move to her new home in the hospital for the next couple of months and be away from her girls. She wrote, I was dreading it. How do you explain to 3-year-olds that mommy won't be home for a couple of months? And then when she finally does get home, she will have a smaller tummy but a much bigger heart swollen with love for 8 children, not just 2.
Her pregnancy was exhausting. Her doctors put her on complete bed rest early in her first trimester, and she endured 20 weeks in the hospital.
My body was failing. I remember thinking, I can feel it. It's giving up.
While in the hospital, Kate had to follow a strict set of rules in order to carry the sextuplets for another 10 weeks. She wrote, "I had to consume at least 4,000 calories every day." While Kate suffered in the hospital, Jon stayed home and cared for the twins. To prevent Kate's pregnancy from turning into a media frenzy, her doctor advised them to keep their story and the fact that they were expecting so many babies as quiet as possible. To help maintain control of the narrative and the well-being of Kate's pregnancy, the hospital hired a public relations liaison to handle this matter. Kate wrote, "On Monday, April 5th, 2004, Jon took a seat in the middle of a long banquet table. Cameras flashed as the panel of seasoned professionals and one very proud daddy-to-be fielded questions from a room packed full of reporters. It was officially announced that Jon and Kate were indeed expecting 6 babies. In addition to their first press conference, Jon and Kate also agreed to give their hometown newspaper, the Reading Eagle, an in-room exclusive interview. Little did they know that this taste of attention would be nothing compared to their amount of fame in the years to come. Jon and Kate became overnight celebrities in their hometown, and this was just the beginning to something massive. Soon, they were flooded with reporters trying to get the inside scoop on their family. Physicians who worked at the hospital would try to break into Kate's room, which was only accessible to certain staff. Kate wrote, "Media attention at first was flattering. Who wouldn't want to know that so many people were rooting for your babies to survive? But in many ways, it was an added distraction that was beyond what we were prepared to cope with." In addition to dealing with their newfound hometown fame, Jon and Kate were on a countdown as they anticipated the birth of their 6 babies. Kate would become increasingly uncomfortable, which caused her to lash out at Jon often. She wrote, "I was one miserable mama. Every tissue, muscle, ligament, and bone in my body was in agreement. This just couldn't go on much longer. I was carrying an extra 65 pounds and not able to fully extend my arms around my unbelievably big belly. I was sick with worry and sleep deprived. I felt like a giant cement truck. I began picking fights with Jon for no reason at all. God bless him. He patiently bore the brunt of my expended patience and perseverance." After months of suffering in the hospital, Kate would be informed that she was 3 centimeters dilated and 100% effaced. The babies were on their way.
On May 10th, 2004, 30 weeks into the pregnancy, Kate went into labor.
I was wheeled in that morning, and I kind of wish now I would have stopped and just really reveled in that moment, like, it's over. Like, yesterday was the last day of this. So I just sobbed through the whole preparation time, and I remember saying to them, I'm sorry, I don't have any more strength left. And they said that was okay, and sorry. And it was difficult. I call it torture chamber. It was really difficult. They wanted to put me under. We had this argument ongoing during the hospitalization. They wanted to put me under for the delivery, and I knew we wouldn't be allowed to videotape or take pictures. And so I argued with them and made a huge fuss about it, telling my doctor, they're not putting me under. I didn't go through this not to hear them cry and to see their little faces.
Despite the potential complications, at 7:51 that morning, the tiny but healthy Gosselin sextuplets were born by cesarean.
Kate Gosselin, you just had sextuplets.
They pulled Alexis out, and I'll never forget that because it was like 50 or 75 people who broke into applause. She gave a really loud, awesome cry, and is so Alexis. And each baby after that they pulled out. It was awesome to hear them and to know that they were okay. There was no time to pause to show them to me. And so I was like trying to watch them as they went by. But that was the most, again, torture chamber, the experience of them pulling them out. I remember saying to Jon, it feels like they're pulling each of my organs out one at a time. I could actually feel it.
5 days after the birth of the babies, Kate was discharged from the hospital while the sextuplets remained. Her departure and having to be separated from her babies was devastating to Kate, but she had 2 3-year-old girls to get home to, the twins, Mady and Cara, who, by the way, really missed their mother. Kate wrote, "Dinner, however, didn't turn out to be the celebration Jon and I had envisioned. It was instead upsetting for my girls. Their young world was about to be rocked yet again with another big change. Mady and Cara basically misbehaved to the point of tears, for all of us. As they tested the waters, I tried my best to be patient and understanding. I knew the girls had been forced to adapt to many changes, and my reappearance had just sent them over the edge.
What did the twins think?
We were very worried because they wanted a little brother or a sister, not 6 of them.
Yes.
And, you know, it's still a process for them, to be honest. There is still jealousy from them that crops up here and there.
Because the twins are 7.
The twins are 7. Mm-hmm. The world revolved around them. And then it became 8 kids in 3 minutes. So it's still a process to get them to accept that we are a team, we're a family, we're working together, we're a unit.
Jon and Kate's new life was very hectic and chaotic as they tried to navigate it all. To help out, Kate's parents stepped in and watched the girls, while Kate spent most of her time at the hospital with the babies. She wrote, "I'm going to admit something here that I have received much criticism for. I wholeheartedly bonded with Hannah, the first of my babies that I could actually hold and snuggle. She and I sort of grew this unexplainable instant attachment from the start. She seemed to respond to me as I did to her, and we mutually fed each other's need to nurture and be nurtured. I am not saying that I did not bond with my other children. I am simply saying, for the sole benefit of the other members of multiples out there, that we are human."
Just having enough time to devote to each one.
Yeah, there isn't enough time. There's not enough arms. There's never enough sleep. There's never enough money. It's going to be hard.
Yeah. Did it take you guys a long time to bond with the sextuplets?
Yes, I can honestly say, looking back, it took a full year until I felt solely and completely bonded with each of my babies.
Yeah. Jon, do you guys ever feel judged by people because of your decision to have all 6 or to carry all 6?
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, that was our decision, and we would never take it back ever. I never regretted it.
Never. Yeah.
I love them to death. I mean, how could you choose?
Yeah.
Every life that is created does have a purpose. We fully believe that.
To help the family transition, the hospital social worker told the Gosselins that they could move into the Ronald McDonald house in Hershey, Pennsylvania, just minutes from the hospital. While Jon, Kate, and the twins lived at the Ronald McDonald house, their home was also receiving a makeover presented as a gift from a new television show. After spending some months in the hospital, the babies grew stronger, healthier, and were ready to go home. The first babies to go home would be Hannah, and then Leah, followed by Alexis, then Joel, Aiden, and finally Colin. As a family of 10, things were about to get interesting. Kay wrote, "After a long night, we realized we needed help, and fast. It had been downright scary throughout the night to go from one baby to the next, and the next, and the next, and well, you get the idea. It seemed never ending. Just as we would get one baby changed, fed, and back to sleep, we would quickly turn to the next one in line, who was usually working himself up into a frantic frenzy. As daylight dawned, we felt like someone had put us on a treadmill without showing us how to stop the dumb thing. We were running and running and running and running, and yet as we raced to make bottles, give feedings, and change diapers, we felt as though we were getting nowhere. Not fast enough.
And no matter how organized they are, and no matter how much they stick to a schedule, there's really no stopping the noise level here.
To help the family of 10, their insurance company would send out 2 night nurses to help them with the babies, but that wasn't it. Jon and Kate were flooded with volunteers, people in their community who simply wanted to help. And so, with additional hands, things began to ease up just a bit.
Right, some of the people, obviously, who helped us feed babies either were our friends before or became our friends through it. Nana Janet used to actually come over and bring me a meal or whatever when Cara and Mady were born, and when I was on bed rest then. And Nanny Joan appeared the first week when we got home, and she had babysat Jon growing up. And Beth, we met actually. She signed up to feed babies. And now she's one of my very nearest and dearest friends. She was like an angel sent from God because she's so multi-talented in many areas.
On July 19th, the family would pack up and return to their newly decorated home. They had their volunteers in place, their schedules in order, and ready to go. Kate wrote, "As we turned onto our normally quiet suburban street, I could hardly believe my eyes. It looked like a summer block party. Neighbors had gathered in the street and were excitedly snapping pictures and clapping as we pulled up to the house. The television camera crew had set up camp on the front lawn and was hurriedly getting into position. Not 5 minutes after we stepped out of the vans, we had controversy. The television crew wanted to capture my first reaction to the renovations. They didn't want me to bring the babies into the house until after they had the chance to film. As I walked into our new living room, it hit me. I still had no idea what our lives looked like. Everything was different, even our house." Kate was less than pleased with the new designs in her home. She didn't like the colors, the style, the layout, nothing, and couldn't even pretend to like it for the cameras. In addition to this problem, Jon was still unemployed. Kate wrote, "Our financial situation was beginning to look bleak. Jon continually searched for job opportunities, but was told he was either overqualified or underqualified. He was exhausted and frustrated. But I think the hardest part was being constantly surrounded with a room full of female volunteers who would, unknowingly, take a stab at his male ego every time they asked the inevitable question of the day. 'So, Jon, did you find a job yet?' I'd cringe every time because I knew he felt like a failure who could not provide for his family."
Jon was unemployed this entire time. Couldn't pay our bills. Tougher, I mean, he stood in line at the Salvation Army for, heating assistance. A lot of guilt because we couldn't afford 2 kids, let alone 8. Were we the right choice for this? A lot.
This difficult time was especially hard on Jon.
He was trying to hang on. He aged a lot that year. Certainly a lot more than any 27-year-old I had known had ever gone through.
Though the family was struggling financially, there was some relief for them in the form of generous donations. They received items like 6 cribs, 2 triple-wide strollers, and 6 car seats. They also received about $5,000 in gift cards, a year's supply of diapers, and a check from Allstate Insurance for $1,500. Small companies would step in and help pay their bills. They would buy the kids Christmas gifts. Churches donated thousands of dollars to the Gosselin family. Kate wrote, "Because I was raised in an atmosphere of financial stress, my biggest fear was that I would never have enough. God was slowly erasing those fears and taking me full circle to realize that not only did I not need as much as I once thought I did to exist, but that He would in fact never be late in meeting my needs. If I just trusted Him, He would give me more fulfillment than I ever thought possible."
When things appeared on our doorstep, it was a miracle. And
things like what?
Simple things from paper towels. I mentioned one time, no volunteers, nobody was in our house. We did have 50 people in and out every week. The moment I said to Jon, "We're using a lot of paper towels," that was a hardship for us. And volunteers would come in and wash their hands before they picked up babies and dry with paper towels. So we were going through rolls. And that night, a volunteer came for the 8 o'clock feeding and said, "There's something on your porch. Should I bring it in?" And I said, "Please do." And it was a case of paper towels.
Wow.
So it was that was a defining moment, because soon after that, I was quoted as saying, "It's a miracle a day in our house," because little things like that just kept happening.
All the time.
We kept believing and having faith, and it was difficult. I mean, the day to day, I didn't want to get out of bed. I was depressed and felt like, what in the world? It took us about 2 years to accept that this is now our new family.
Though many supported the family, Jon and Kate were often criticized by others in their community.
You wanted one baby, one more child.
Yes,
Okay,
one more.
When you were told that there were going to be 6 children, what did you think?
There were 7 originally, which is way more scary than 6 for some reason. The one baby stopped growing on its own.
You could have reduced the number. You didn't.
Because I had prayed for a baby, and I felt like you don't ask God for a baby, and when He gives you too many, give them back.
They were the talk of the town. This gossip made them feel isolated as they were constantly exposed and on public display. Kate wrote, It was humiliating to have very personal discussions, especially concerning our money situation, Jon's lack of employment, discipline of the girls, or even personal trials and feelings in front of whoever happened to be helping with the babies at any given moment. Many times I would explode at Jon, making him the dartboard for all my anger, fear, and frustration. Our 5 years of marriage felt like a thin crust of ice on a frozen pond. Even minor disagreements seemed to put major cracks in the ice, and I was afraid one of us was just going to fall through one day and drown. Kate began suffering from severe depression, which turned into resentment. She wrote, "I wondered to myself, can't anyone see that I am bleeding over here?" To me, it felt like I was a gunshot victim lying in a pool of blood on the floor of the emergency room while everyone rushed out to clip a hangnail. I became very resentful as I listened to the pointless chatter of the volunteers. I was fighting off depression and wanted to just bury my head and never get up. My sharp and cynical attitude was not winning me any friends in the circle of volunteers. I began to feel like an outsider in my own home. After struggling for months to find work, Jon finally received a job offer at the state capitol. This was the best news the family had received in a very long time. They relied on volunteers, family, and donations to get by. Now, with the news of Jon's new job, they could start rebuilding and reestablishing their financial security again. At the beginning of 2005, Jon's father unexpectedly passed, which deeply affected the family. But as they mourned, Jon prepared himself for his new job. Kate would now be completely in charge. She still had help from the volunteers to maintain what she described to be a boot camp-like house. She wrote, "It had to be this way to avoid complete mayhem. Some viewed my incessant list-making as a serious sign that I was just an obsessive-compulsive control freak.
I'm just doing everything on my list. That is always and forever more things to do than is crossed off."
It would be impossible for the Gosselins' home to be free of chaos, but it is kept to a minimum, thanks to Kate's extreme organization.
According to my husband, I go a little overboard in the organizational department a lot of times, but I feel like it's the only way I can survive, knowing a strict schedule, what comes next. I never have to guess. There's no guesswork. Good afternoon!
Married life for Jon and Kate would also change drastically after welcoming the babies. Jon was busy with work while Kate was busy trying to manage the kids as well as volunteers, and that really put a strain on their relationship as they didn't have much one-on-one time together.
The sad part of me working during the week and so far away is I don't get to see my wife or spend time with her as much as I would like to. We don't even get to eat dinner together.
Though Jon's schedule required him to be gone most of the day, he was a hands-on parent as soon as he walked through the door. In their book, Kate wrote the following, quote, "I don't know of many dads who would willingly come home from a full workday after an hour-and-a-half commute each way and still take on the energetic, all-consuming task of bathing 8 children. Some women get jewelry, fancy gifts, or expensive dinners when their husband wants to get in their good graces. Not me. Give me a man who allows me a solid hour by myself while he manages to wash 16 sticky hands and 8 goopy noses." Though Jon and Kate were blessed to have extra help, that luxury would soon come to an end when Medicaid would no longer pay for those services. This decision really upset Kate. She wrote, "I knew I could not adequately take care of the many pressing needs of 6 babies at one time by myself, so I decided to fight for 6 additional months. I stood my ground by reminding the Insurance Review Board that the law for the ratio between the number of babies and caregivers in a Pennsylvania daycare facility was just 3-to-1. How could it be safe for me to take care of not only 6 one-year-olds, but also 2 4-year-olds? I heard much criticism through the grapevine for my persistent stance. I think there were some people who felt Jon and I had our hand out, always wanting more and more help. Some had the opinion that I had asked for all these babies, and it was now my responsibility to care for them.
So for people who say, you knew what you were getting into, you asked for it, what is your response to that?
No. The goal of infertility treatments is to create one baby. And many, many people that go through it for years on end either have none. We get emails all the time. We never did have a baby. We did 10 years of infertility, never had a baby. Or people who have one. To this day, and our kids are 3.5, there is only now 14 living sets ever born in this country. 14. So does that cross any fertility patient's mind when they walk into the clinic? No.
And
are you playing are you gambling? Are you taking chances? Yes.
On a hot summer day in August of 2005, Jon would receive an email that would forever change their lives. The email was from a television production company that had heard of the Gosselins and were interested in doing a 1-hour documentary special. Jon immediately said no, as he wanted no part of the media firestorm. Kate, on the other hand, toyed with the idea. After putting their house on the market and selling it, Jon and Kate purchased a Cape Cod-style home with more room for their family. Upon moving in, Kate was able to convince Jon to do the 1-hour documentary special on their family.
This wonderful man contacted us. His name is Bill Hayes, and
his philosophy was he does TV to help people understand each other better. And I couldn't argue with that, because at that time, we just wanted people to understand us better.
Yeah, and we want the best for our kids, so we will do the absolute best necessary for them.
When the documentary aired, it was a hit. After the success of the special, the Gosselins were offered their own show, Jon and Kate Plus 8. Their show premiered in April 2007 and took off. Kate is quoted saying that the show was heaven sent, as it saved the family from their financial woes.
And so when they approached us, we were feeling very misunderstood.
Yes.
And their
misunderstood
approach,
how?
In every way. In our community, people were saying, oh goodness, they're unemployed and they have 8 kids. And there was a lot of yuck. Really a lot. And
because they didn't understand that.
They didn't understand that.
How am I going to get a job?
We were given 6 more children, but that didn't mean we didn't love them and want them and want them to do well. We had to stretch our hearts, essentially, and people didn't understand that. At the same time, they wanted to know if they could have peeked through our windows. I think that they would have. And so we were saying, well, you don't need to peek through our windows. Let's do this hour special and explain how we do it.
So it started out as an hour special. It did so well for Discovery Health.
It became a 2nd hour special. And at that time, they said, would you like to do a series? And by then, we had been doing this for a year. Same crew. Our kids loved them. And by then, it was just kind of like, let's see what we can do with this.
Venture out.
The other reason for us was not only to let people understand what we were going through, but also it was, for us, memories that we didn't have time to videotape.
Millions of people tuned in to watch The Family of 10, and soon the show became the #1 rated show on TLC, and still remains the highest rated show on that platform ever. Their unexpected rise to fame thrust the Gosselins into the spotlight, and with that fame, they all lived happily ever after. Well,
the most popular reality show couple on TV say their marriage is over. Jon and Kate of Jon and Kate Plus 8 fame added a big dose of reality to their show Monday night when they announced they are separating.
So, Jon, there's been a lot in the press here lately. Can you clear the air and fill us in on what's going on between you and Kate?